God's grace in my life. When I look back on the things I've done, I see God's grace in my